All right, everybody. Typically at this point of the show, what we normally do is go over the weekly news and kind of spitfire on that kind of stuff. But instead of spitfire, we're bringing you some swap fire this evening. And we have a very special guest with us this evening, Mr. Jeremy Alessi. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, you did. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Cool. And he is the founder of Midnight Status, a.k.a. the creators of SwapFire, which he doesn't know this yet, but we can finally say it. Actually, the review I did for SwapFire is the #1 viewed review we've had on our website by over 1,000 views. So no pressure, but people are reading it. We wanted to get you on to talk a little bit more about what you do and about SwapFire specifically, of course. So let's just dive right in. So the first question we got for you is, tell us a little bit about yourself, how Midnight Status came to be, as well as SwapFire the game.
So I've wanted to make games for a long time, probably like a lot of people who are game players, maybe since the NES days. You know, maybe I had graph paper and stuff like that. Used to put little games together to sort of emulate what you used to play with, I don't know, like Zelda 2 or even the original Zelda, that type of stuff. I always had an interest in it, and I think I got like a PlayStation. This kind of I was a Sony player for a little while before returning to just being like almost exclusive Nintendo player. But I got a Sony Underground disc, and Dave Jaffe, who was the designer of Twisted Metal, was on that disc, and I had recently written like my first program on a calculator. Like I wanted to make a drag racing game. So it's like going way back when I was in high school. And on this disc, you know, he talks about, well, you should be able to make something fun, you know, even with simple rules and things like that. And I was like, well, I'm making a game on a calculator, you know. And when I saw that disc and I had been writing that game, that's when I realized that I wanted to make games for a living. And so from that point forward, I pursued it, you know, pretty hardcore. I got a game published with Garage Games in the early 2000s called Aerial Antics, which was like a jetpack flight simulator. Probably my favorite game of all time is the original Pilot Wings on the Super NES. And so I made this game that was basically just the jetpack portion of that. I think throughout the years, I always wanted to make games for Nintendo, but you know, it's hard to get there. And so I made a lot of PC games, and I made some mobile games, had a pretty popular mobile game called Airspin. And a lot of these games were, I think, just like my love letters to Nintendo. Growing up, having played Nintendo games, I made a lot of games that I think were inspired by, you know, like Nintendo games or Nintendo-like content. And you know, it's been a pretty long road, been making games for about 20 years. And in 2014, I got the chance to make a game for Nintendo. I applied to be a Wii U developer, and they had like a short interview process and stuff, and you know, just sort of asked like, well, hey, why do you want to make games for Nintendo? And I said, well, you know, quite frankly, that's where I've wanted to be, and I just really like the philosophy. I think Nintendo, you know, they try to always give you something different and sort of twist your mind a little bit, but they have the same familiar characters, but you're always doing something different with those characters. I think I've got this book. I've got like 5 copies of this book. Have you guys seen this book, Game Over?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've read it. Yep.
It's a great book. I think I've read this book like 5 times. And in the book, it says that Nintendo means, you know, work hard or do your best, but in the end, it's in heaven's hands. It's this kind of, that's a really, I think, interesting philosophy. But you know, it's like it's so true. It's like, hey, work hard, but you don't know what's you don't know what's going to happen. So all you can do is do your best, and then hope that works out, or hope that you know everybody else or the world at large finds what you've done valuable. So hey, getting that opportunity to work on Nintendo games in 2014 was like a lifelong dream, and I thought long and hard about what to make. I was porting Airspin to the Wii U, and you know, just sort of half-heartedly though. Like that wasn't really what I wanted to make, but I wasn't sure what to make. About a year later, Henry Meredith had just graduated college. He worked really hard on this game with me, as well as a few other people. And he came over, and I showed him the dev kit, and you know, sort of playing around. I showed him Airspin. We had a 2-player version of that, and it was like, hey, this is all right. This is kind of fun, you know. But we weren't having a great time. So I said, hey, let me show you this other game I made. So I made SwapFire, the first version of SwapFire, for a 7-day first-person shooter game jam. I think we have that on the website and stuff like that back in 2012. So set that up on PC, and it was like a local area networked game, and we were just having instantly like a much better time playing that. So it was like, all right, we're going to make that game. And I think that's where, everything's sort of locked into place. So, here we are, we're two big Nintendo fans, having sort of followed this path of game development for a long time and having gotten this chance. Now it was like, all right, let's make this game that's not a clone of anything or really directly inspired by anything other than the philosophy, I would say, of, just really doing your best, coming up with something creative, a unique mechanic that sort of twists your mind in a new way. And, let's run, full steam with that and do the best that we can. So, and, I think that sort of brings us up to now. I definitely did a lot of, I definitely compressed that a lot. I made a lot of other games besides entertainment, PC or mobile games in the past as well. I've done a lot of modeling and simulation, serious games, and some educational stuff as well. But, more or less on the game side, on the entertainment side, that's sort of the path.
And for sure, I mean, you're living the dream, man. I think all of us here at some point would be like, man, I'd love to work in actually developing or designing video games, and we're just lazy. So instead, we decided to do a podcast and just talk about them and have you do all the hard work. But it's and God bless you. You're doing the God's work for sure for us. So we don't have to do it ourselves. We'll just enjoy it instead. So let's get on to the topic specifically of SwapFire itself. So for those of you who haven't read the review yet, SwapFire is described as a the year is 2139. Retro Quantum Industries has invented the next wave of transportation. Forget autonomous vehicles. These scientists invented teleportation. So unfortunately, even though the technology of advanced citizens are terrified to have their bodies teleported through time and space, after spending billions of dollars in R&D, the company cannot afford commercial failure. So they came up with a little solution, and it's called SwapFire, a high-stakes game show featuring teenage contestants utilizing that technology. Sales and usage of consumer-grade personal teleporters spiked after the first season of SwapFire, and they basically turned it into a game show, a survival-type game show. Think like American Gladiators type thing using this technology, which, I mean, it sounds perfectly safe. Just teleport each other. It's fine.
There's nothing going on in the background there at all.
No, nothing at all. So the game is currently available on Wii U exclusively and features 9 different gameplay modes. So for you, first off, what are the 9 different game modes? And you give a brief description of each, and then kind of tell us what was your favorite one to come up with and design or play.
So the 9 modes are, and I'll start with the original mode, basically, which is Drop Zone. So in the for the 7-day FPS, the idea was that in most first-person shooter games, you get to cover and you fire out, at your opponents, and almost every FPS game does this. So the 7-day jam was, do something different with an FPS. So in the first SwapFire that we made for that, you had to either jump off the level and shoot somebody, and then they would fall off, not you, and that still happens in Drop Zone. And in that original jam game, there were a bunch of spinning blades, and it actually sort of looked like Mortal Kombat, so it was very dark. And you could jump at the blades, and then the characters would go all ragdoll if you missed, of course, if you didn't shoot somebody and you hit it. So it was a really big risk reward challenge. And the game at its core is still about that. What I wanted to do, I think one of the reasons I got stuck with that jam game was because it was very dark, and I didn't want to make anything dark. And so a lot of what happened when we decided to come to Nintendo was to lighten the mood a lot. So, but Drop Zone's still in there, and that risk reward, that feeling of that rush you get when you jump off the level is still there. So that's very much intact. We also designed, we have several cups. We start out with the Quantum Cup, and then we do the Atomic Cup and the Galactic Cup and the Universal Cup. So, and then there's an exhibition mode. So I'll just go through the cups. Basically, in Quantum Cup, we have a King of the Hill mode, a Capture the Flag mode, and Swacker. And the reason that we designed those maps was to give players something they were a little bit familiar with before taking them into things like Drop Zone or I'm trying to think some of the Find Buddy. Some of the modes that we came up with are pretty different, and they're a little random. But they really all just use this core mechanic that when you shoot somebody else, you trade places with them. So our King of the Hill mode, takes place on these rooftops, and there's like a giant square that you're trying to get into, a box. The first player to rush in and get into the box starts accumulating points, and then the other players are blocked out. They can't get in. It goes solid. So if you try to get in, you'll hit the wall, and you can't get in unless you snipe them, and then you'll swap in, and you'll be inside the box, and then they'll be outside. So once you're inside the box, of course, you want to just sort of bob and weave as much as you can so that nobody can hit you. And you might want to get the shield power up, but of course people can use the swap bomb to break through the shield and stuff like that. So our capture the flag mode, you mentioned American Gladiators before, is definitely inspired by the capture the flag, or I don't even know if it was capture the flag. Did you remember? Was that?
It was, yeah, they didn't call it capture the flag specifically, but yeah, it definitely reminded me of it when I was playing through, where you just had to kind of get to the point being be on top of the mountain.
Yeah, definitely.
It might have been King of the Mountain or something, but yeah.
American Gladiators growing up, they're the challengers had to like rush from pillar to pillar and like sneak up on the gladiator who had a giant cannon.
The tennis ball gun, yep.
Yeah. And so the capture the flag mode, there's a cage in the center, and 3 of the combatants everybody starts in the cage, and there's a swap buddy on the outside. So in the game we have these little statues called swap buddies, and they aid you in the training, so that as you're going through the single player stuff, you use them to get around the level and solve puzzles and things like that. But we also put them in a couple of the multiplayer modes. So you'll have to, the first person to hit the swap buddies out, and then they start to run. And then they have to run past the other players who are in this cage in the center and get all the way to the other side of the field. So it's like a rectangular shaped field. And then when they get the flag, they have to circle back around and get past the other players again in order to return it. Now, of course, if anybody shoots that player, then they swap into that player's position and they also take the flag. So it can get pretty intense at the end there as when you're trying to score. And it's definitely frustrating if somebody takes the flag from you right at the last second.
Right at the end, yep.
And then we have Swalker. So I think Swalker was maybe the 3rd mode that was developed. And it was really rough. I remember the first night I put this together. We had we were playing Drop Zone, and what we did with this game was, as soon as we had it working on the Wii U, I called all my friends that used to play Smash Brothers and all the N64 games, because that's what we played in college. We played GoldenEye and we played Smash Brothers and any other Mario Kart, any other 4-player title. And so I called them all back over and said, hey, play this game with us. I want to see if it makes me feel the same way as we felt back then. And that's very much, we were just trying to capture that essence. So we're all having a lot of fun with Drop Zone, and with Swalker. I just prototyped something really fast. I was like, hey, let's try this. And everybody was like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. This kind of sucks. I think Henry said something to the effect, hey, that's great and all, but I wouldn't put my name on it and try to sell it. Thankfully, I was able to clean it up a little bit by that weekend. That was September. I want to say it was like September or October. It was October of 2015. And we had a little like street festival here in Norfolk called Neon. And so by that weekend, we had that mode up, and I think it was the most popular mode that weekend. So it sort of polished it up a little bit. And basically in Swalker, it's on a field like you'd find a typical stadium, but the 4 corners, it's almost like pool a little bit, have the different colors. So, and you want to score on your own goal. So if you're the red player, you want to put the ball into the red goal. If you're the green player, you want to put it into the green goal. And there'll be a little arrow above the goal, in your view, in your viewport, showing you where to go. In this mode, the thing that's different is when you shoot the other players, you still swap places with them, but the ball itself, which is purple, and the shield in the game is also purple, and we're sort of trying to build a lore thing there where these purple round objects are, they sort of deflect the Iron Ross cannon, and so you don't swap places with those things. They either block it or, in the ball's case, you can push it. Now, you can still swap places with the other players, and also in the lore, the swap bomb can break through the shield, and it can also swap places with the ball. So that definitely adds a lot of strategy once you start throwing the swap bomb in there. But I think Swalker, a lot of people keep comparing it to Rocket League a little bit. Yep. It gives them that sort of vibe. Say back in the day, I made with Aerial Antics, which was that jetpack game. I actually did release this in a reflexive version way back, but we had a jetpack soccer game, where it was very much like I mean literally the jetpack and very much like the controls from Pilot Wings, but you could kick the ball and stuff, and that was a lot of fun. So I always wanted to make a return to that, and Swacker I think is it's very similar to that, but it's fast paced, but it's also very strategic. So everybody has a lot of fun, I think, with that mode. And sometimes we put people into that mode first. Any of those first three modes, they're sort of familiar, and it's something you've played before. By the time you get to the next cup, which is the Atomic Cup, then that's where we've got Find Buddy and Rally Point, and we think what the other mode is real quick, Control Point. So Control Point is the first in the cup. Control Point was I guess that was the second mode that we ever came up with after Drop Zone. And on a recent Twitter poll, that was actually, people ranked that as the best mode, which I think I was very surprised by that. I think my personal favorites are probably Drop Zone, Swalker, and Race Mode.
Yeah.
Maybe Find Buddy. I really like Find Buddy a lot. But people love Control Point. I think it's one of the more strategic modes, where you really have to be careful about how you manipulate time and space in order to win. And so I guess people really get into that. I think it's the one mode where you really have to like count your steps and sort of be sure you're not taking too many.
Yeah.
You don't want to be moving yourself through space very much. You want to be using the teleportation in order to sort of maximize your time on the field. And I guess people have found a liking to that mode. Find Buddy is the next in the Atomic Cup, and that's like our odd man out mode. So in the game, and you've seen the exhibition, we've got the 9 tiles, and Find Buddy's right in the center. And we sort of made that as when you're playing the game, anybody can win this mode. It's just like there's a degree of randomness to it where the buddies are placed and stuff like that. There are strategies to try to cultivate the win, but I mean the buddy could be right in front of somebody when they spawn and they can get it, and it's 1,000 points, so it's huge in the tournament cup. And we just found that when we were playing through the modes early on, that it was nice to give some of the less skilled players something that they could win big at and be like, I love Find Buddy. Okay,
get their hopes up.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the modes that we had the most fun in when you got 2 good players too, and like one player would realize that another player had found their buddy and they were going for it, and then all of a sudden they start swapping them to take them away from the buddy, and or maybe planting a swap bomb by the buddy and swapping it at the last second. I think that's one of my favorite tactics in that mode. So or hiding their buddy in some obscure place or on the highest roof or whatever. So Find Buddy is not as it's not as direct, I think, as the other modes. The other modes are very directly competitive, and Find Buddy, it's a really big map. Against the AI, it can be a little frustrating, I think, because the AI tends to find the buddy quicker. Like until you learn the map and you learn the strategies, it's I think a little bit tough. Something that would probably balance out if we do another Find Buddy mode in the future. But with 4 human players, that mode I think is a lot of fun, and that's one of my go-tos. And my cousins love that mode, so we play that one a lot. Then there's Rally Points. I think Rally Point's the fastest paced mode in the game. It's you're running to these point values on the floor in these maps. And there's a 50s and there's 25s, and the logo in the center is worth 100 points. But if 2 people are in one of those circles at any given time, then they can't get the points from somebody else. And so the 100 is, it's this claustrophobic, section of the map. So you have to be really careful about how you go for that. And, some players that just like really direct FPS games, if you're like a Quake player or something like that, they just love that mode because it's so rapid fire. We were at the library the other day where we spent a lot of time making this game. And where we have Pixel Fest, and I can tell you guys more about that if you don't know about it. And there were 2 kids who had been playing it in the library, and they came over to talk to us like, did you make this? And, I really like Rally Point. That's my favorite because I just like to shoot people really fast. And, so I guess it accomplishes that sort of Twitch, just real quick gameplay. And then moving on to the Galactic Cup, we kicked that off with Drop Zone, which I described already. That's definitely I think that's one of the favorites. And then there's Jettison, which I think a lot of people so far aren't big fans of. I like it. I like that mode quite a bit. I've watched the guys that did the On the Links videos on YouTube. I don't know if you watched those, but they were like, yeah, this mode is just impossible. So people feel like it's a very difficult mode. And basically what it is there's a square and everybody's got a pool. And they have to jump up and shoot these boxes that have point values on them and get them into their pool. So you're trying to hoard as many boxes and you want to get the highest point values, of course, and you want to get them all into your pool. You can steal them from other people's pools and so on and so forth, but it's very much a jump back and use the velocity, your velocity to sort of transfer the box behind you. So when you're traveling backwards, if you shoot the box, one of these cubes, you'll be in the pool where the cube was, and it'll keep sailing backwards. I think it's a little bit tricky for a lot of people. If you're, people that are really, I guess, really get the physics can get into it. So we have one of the hints is, if you can get all the cubes in your pool, then you win, which you can. And I guess on that video they're like, it's impossible.
Yeah, I can't. I know that much. So.
Yeah, so it's I guess that is tricky. Internally we were playing. I was like, hey, did you know you can actually get all the boxes like in your pool? So we made this this special trigger for it. So it's sort of I guess it's like a secret achievement if you can pull it off. But yeah, I don't know if there's a lot of love for that mode going around. I think that's the one that challenges people the most. I get a kick out of it, and I guess there's been a couple of other people, but maybe that one won't return. I don't know. The last one is race mode, which I think is probably one of the most fun and most straightforward modes in the game. You're sort of scampering along this asteroid field, and you're trying to hit this goal at the end as many times as you can. So just sort of looping, and obviously other players can snipe you and take your place. So one of the biggest pains is when you're about to score and somebody picks up the sniper and just picks you off from the first island. And so we make a joke. It's a little like Mario Kart. When you're in first place, you're really in last place.
Blue shell.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that. There's definitely some good strategies in that one too. I think one of my favorite things is to always plant the swap bomb on the second to last island, before somebody scores, and you can pick them off that way. So with that mode, anything you can do to sort of allow yourself to get to the goal quicker, you know what I mean? You have to do. You have to use the speed. You have to use the sniper. You have to use the swap bomb and sort of chain your way. There's a lot of. I feel like there's a lot of combos that you can sort of put together to get to the goal quicker. So it makes it a lot of fun, and it's just. Also, you can screw your friends over. You can jump off the side, and as you're falling, you snipe them. You're where they were, and they're falling off. And so that race mode, I don't know. It's tough to say. I think right now maybe race mode is my personal favorite, but that can change on any given day.
Awesome. So yeah, 9 different game modes in there. So there's a lot of content in this game here for sure. So definitely a lot of bang for your buck there. So to move on a little bit here. So I was the fortunate one who got to review the game myself back in December. And I just want to say that the old school roots of it, and you brought up a lot of the references there with the American Gladiators, the Mario Kart, the GoldenEye, all that kind of stuff, and that vibe of 4 people playing it together on the couch is what I loved about this game. It has its roots in the old school gaming, and that's awesome. In my review, I summed it up as the experience as being it's like GoldenEye met and fell in love with Portal. Then they had a little baby that with a bunch of crazy Smash Brothers like unpredictability. Would you say that's a pretty fair description of what you just said?
Man, we use that quote ever. So it's an amazing quote. Yeah, when we saw that, that review came out on my birthday. It was the best. I think it was the best birthday gift I got. I think it was the best birthday gift I got. Yeah.
There you go.
It was by design, gentlemen. It was by design.
I was so happy.
All right, Donnie, I think you're up.
Okay. One of the questions that we had was, and it sounds like you've already answered it with everything you've went into and how much love you've put into all of the different modes and how much SwapFire offers. But when you got together with your first-person shooter meet, was the goal always to make a couch co-op thing? It's something that we don't really see anymore, or at least we see less of, and definitely.
Yeah, the couch co-op came later. So the first version of the game was online multiplayer. Made it in 7 days, and it was a PC game. And I actually, it's funny, I made a Kickstarter for the original Jam game back in 2012, and I never launched it. It was a very strange video. I might release it at some point, but it was too weird. It was too dark, and I didn't want to go there. So I shelved that, and I kept thinking about releasing the game or what to do with it, and I don't know. It really just seemed perfect when I met Henry. And he being such a big Nintendo fan also. I think the first time that I met him, I sat down with him, and he really looks like an Xbox bro. So I was like, oh, he's gonna say he likes Xbox. I know it. And
We've got some of those. So
yeah, we're
okay.
like, we met, and we're having coffee and stuff, and he's like you said, he just graduated and stuff, and I was working on some other stuff. I'd made a game for Kishibashi, like a mobile game a few years ago, and it was a big flop. And I was like, all right, I think I might be done making games. Like, I'm not going to make any more games because I got to do some utilitarian stuff. And I've got some other software, that my company writes that we also, make a living on and stuff like that. But I was like, man, games are risky and stuff. And, but I was like, what's the first thing I asked people was like, what are you passionate about? You're like, what games do you like? And I was like waiting for the Xbox. And he's just like, no, I'm such a big Nintendo fan. And I have these Zelda dolls and the whole 9 yards. So I was like, okay, maybe we can work together. Let me show you. So that's when I was like, come on over. I'll show you the dev kit and I'll show you Airspin and everything like that. So I think, when we got together and started talking about Nintendo and what we loved about Nintendo games and experiences, that's where the couch co-op stuff really came back into it, and we made this demo that I guess when we started on the Wii U, we were like, hey, the Wii U has the most fragmented controls. It's so terrible because there's so many different controllers. And it was like, man, I guess we have to just make the game work with the Wii U, with the Wii remote. That was like a technical challenge that we were just like, we're going to do this thing where you just make the game work with the Wii remote and see if people will play that. So I made a 4-player split screen, and it was basically drop zone. And we took that around and let people play it, and people were able to play it. And so we were like, all right, let's roll with this. It took about 3 weeks to get that controller to work, where you could play it at all. I think people hate the Wii remote controls compared to the dual analog and stuff like that. But when it was the only controller and you handed it to them, especially if you hand it to kids, they haven't really played FPS games yet. They pick it up really quickly, and it's like it's like an NES controller. The only difference is you can twist it to look up and down. So, we showed that to people, and it was multiplayer at that stage. And I think we were not sold on whether we were only going to do local or whether we were going to try to go back into the network mode, because the original Jam game was networked. But as we were working on it, I think we basically said, the best memories are formed on these local games. I was like, do you really have any good memories? Internally, we had this conversation. It's like, do you really have any good memories of an online multiplayer game? And it, of course, you appreciate it and you like it. The first online multiplayer game I played, I remember, and it was Jedi Knight 2, or Jedi Knight, which was Dark Forces 2, I guess. And I was blown away because I'm like, oh, I'm playing this game with this person in California, and that was sort of mind-blowing. But after that, I sort of feel like all my online experiences sort of blend together a little bit. Whereas I distinctly remember playing with my friends all the local multiplayer games. And so, at one point, it was this issue of, well, we're small and we don't really have a lot of resources. We're going to put everything we have into this game, but it's going to be a drop in the bucket compared to what a larger company would be able to do and stuff like that. And maybe we should not try to manage an online infrastructure at this point. Make the game and just let it go out and be this thing that can exist even when the online infrastructure is gone, or even if we don't have enough money to keep it up or something like that. And so part of it was that, but the other part of it was the more we thought about it, the more it made sense to make sure that if people were going to experience this game, that they were going to play it with their friends, because those would be where the best memories would be rooted. And so even if we make an online version of it later, hopefully the memories of the game will be rooted in their friendship. And because that just seems like such a powerful thing, because that's where we had the best time. And even though we've played online multiplayer games, those experiences, really ring pretty hollow. They all sort of run together, and even in modern games, I really enjoyed the Call of Duties on the Wii U, and I could have played it on PlayStation or Xbox, but I got the Wii U version, and the reason that I loved it was because I could play on the gamepad and my friends could play on the TV, and those are the times that I remember playing it. I played it online a bunch of times too, and I don't really remember, playing it online. There was this one time I played it online, and it was like in the middle of the day, when like most people would be working, and it was me playing it, and I was listening to a bunch of kids on the headset, and I was like, I really should be doing something more productive. So I had to like turn it off and leave. So that's probably the only time I really distinctly remember playing it online, because it was just weird. Other than that, it's the, we remember playing with our friends. So those are the best memories. So we want to try to, cultivate that feeling.
All right, Jeremy, these two cream puffs have thrown you softballs.
All right.
So I'm going to come with the hard-hitting questions. So, in the last couple of years, when you think of people, or when you hear people talk about, consoles they want to develop for, I'm guessing most independent developers would not have put Wii U as the number one console, that they were excited about. But in reading, it seems like you, obviously you love Nintendo and you have a genuine passion and think the Wii U is a great console. So why the Wii U? What do you love about it? Why did you want to develop a game for it? And do you see yourself as being a Nintendo developer moving forward, or do you have, the idea of moving on to other consoles and checking other things out as well?
Yeah, the first night that I got the Wii U, I think I prayed to be able to make a game for it. I loved it, and I think I'm like this sort of minority within a minority, because Nintendo, inside of Nintendo fans, I seem to always pick up on the weirdest and most niche things that they do that I really, really love. I love Pilot Wings, which is probably one of the most niche brands, and Super Mario Sunshine is my favorite Mario, and everybody hates that one. And I have a Virtual Boy over there, So, the Wii U, I think it's such a great local multiplayer console. It's maybe the best local multiplayer console, because that gamepad, playing Mario Run. We played the heck out of Mario Run with Nintendo Land, and all those Nintendo Land games I had a great time with. Maybe only the original Wii, as far as family memories go, we have as good of memories, but the Wii was such a shallow experience, I think, as compared to the Wii U. And the Wii U sort of stepped it up a notch in terms of what you could do with that local experience. So I just have a lot of good memories with the system, and I think that it really is the best couch multiplayer system maybe of all time. The N64 was great, but the Wii U, technically sort of steps it up a notch. And with SwapFire, of course, we've got that commentator view, which is like nobody's talked about in any review yet or anything. We took that to MagFest, and people were going just crazy, for that mode. We're yelling, we're like, "You're in first place, do it!" And people are like giving us strange looks. They're walking by and stuff like that. But that's where it's at. It's that energy, that person-to-person energy. We've got this. Where the heck is it? It's right over here. I'm really excited about this thing. I got my vintage N64 toys from 1996. But let's see, where's this guy? This is. Can you guys see that port?
Yep. Yeah.
So it's a modded Wii U gamepad. There's a company called Katsukitty in Japan. I think if you go to like 3DS Game Capture.
Yeah, they do the 3DS game capture.
Yeah, so they do the Wii U gamepad. You can output the display. So we haven't gotten to do this in any like great capacity yet. We're actually testing this at the library when these two kids came up and started talking to us, and it was the first time that we had sort of demoed it in public. But we're at TGS, which is this local game store. Hopefully in the next week or two, we'll get out there, and we're going to do a tournament, and it'll be the first tournament where we've got 4 players playing on one TV, and then the commentator view displayed on hopefully equally large TV. So that, and then Henry is he's a fantastic commentator. He just really amps people up when he plays that role. So hopefully we can amp people up. We can have an audience, and we can sort of create this, just this great local tournament environment. And it's something that I'm really hoping to cultivate in the coming months, I guess. But as to your question, also we're definitely interested in the Switch. Nintendo is very much pushing for certain games that they already know are popular. They want like proven sellers to be the games that they're going for and stuff like that. And unfortunately, right now, SwapFire is not one of those games. So we're gonna have to work a little bit harder to reach people and like let them know how fun this game is and sort of put our best foot forward in order to get there. But hopefully we'll be able to move on to the Switch, before sooner rather than later, and then not spend as much time trying to figure out what the heck to make for it. It's a big that's an awesome responsibility though when you get that. I remember when I got approved, I read all the documentation and I was just like, man, I got to make something really good. Like, what am I going to make? Oh my gosh, it was like, I mean, it was like there was like a mini depression because I just felt like I wouldn't be able to make anything good enough. Yeah.
But if people want to help you, maybe speed up that transition to Switch, SwapFire is currently on sale, isn't it?
It is, yes. We've got a 30% off sale up through Valentine's Day. So we've got a little promotion going on. We've got these Valentines that we made that had the characters doing stupid stuff like trapping the other playing and saying, "You're mine." I dig you. And we've got these guys that are out on the planet watching Jeeves while they're mining minerals off some asteroid somewhere. So, we're hoping people will take advantage of that. I think people have been, pretty receptive. We, our sales were what I thought were disappointing when they started, but they were actually pretty good compared to where it went. I think things had started to level off like towards the end of January, and then we did have a little bit of a spike. So hopefully that will continue, and more players will find out about this game. We definitely put our hearts into it. We know that there's more magnitude. I sort of got a philosophy I follow, which is life as a vector. And while we're making this game, it was pretty apparent that we didn't have the resources to pull off some sort of AAA game. But we'd put whatever we had into it and hope that people would say, that was a pretty good direction to go into and want to invest in it further. So, pick up a copy of the game and, help us to get on to the second game. Right now, if we can spark the sales necessary, we could self-fund the second game like we funded the first one. If not, because maybe the Wii U is going to just sort of fade out and people aren't going to be excited about it enough to pick this up. Then maybe we'll have to turn to some other funding source. Go back and look at that Kickstarter again that I put in 2012 and maybe reboot it. I don't know. I always like the idea of self-funding the game. I feel like when you fund it yourself, you really are taking that risk, and you definitely have to put your all into it. I don't know. Maybe under the right circumstances, crowdsourcing is the same thing. And if you depending on the circumstances of the crowdsourcing, that could be a good platform for us. But I'm not positive about that.
I'm definitely going to have to pick that up. Unfortunately, I didn't get to review SwapFire for the staff because I traded my Wii U in for my Switch pre-order.
Oh,
so if you're telling me,
yeah.
if you're telling me that I need to buy a copy on the Wii U, I can still do that through the eShop. I'll make sure that happens tonight.
All right.
Because my next question was aimed at the Switch. Me and my kids were so excited about the Switch, and that's everybody's focus in the next 3 weeks here. So I know you're interested in bringing it to the Switch. Obviously, you kind of let us know that. Are you excited in the sense that you could have your couch co-op? It could be like a LAN party with SwapFire. You could have 4, 5, 6 players playing on Switch together and you're playing a match.
That'd be amazing.
Those Joy-Cons, you could add more players that way, just like you do with the Wii. Have you seen a dev kit?
We have talked to a couple of other developers briefly. Just people actually contacted us to possibly do port work for them. And so we talked to a couple, real briefly. Didn't get into too many details. Looked at the Joy-Cons for sure, because I think the reason I'm sort of excited about the Joy-Cons is, I guess a little bit selfish, but because we had all the controller fragmentation on the first version, we created those Wii remote controls that I don't think people are huge fans of them, but sort of because of the technical challenge of doing it and sort of making that limited control scheme work, I'm kind of proud of it. And the Joy-Cons look like we'd have to do something similar. They've got the analog stick and they've got the buttons and they have accelerometers and gyros built into them. And the one control scheme that I think is going to die and nobody will have to bring up anymore is the pointer that people want, the Wii remote and the nunchuck.
The nunchuck.
And people keep asking for that, but the reason that we didn't bring that in is because all the control schemes that we have maintain pretty much competitive parity, and I guess part of what we wanted to do is try to foster a competitive tournament environment for the game. And if we had sort of brought that control scheme into it, I think it would have broken the competitive parity. Either that control scheme wouldn't have been able to keep up, or it would have been too dominant because you can just point.
Right.
And the other control schemes are all very much in line with each other. I actually think there might be a slight advantage for the Wii Remote when you get good with it. And my logic goes something like, let me see, get this as a prop. I carry one in my laptop bag at all times. We were actually hanging out in a place last night, and we were showing off a demo we made for Global Game Jam, which is a paper football game that you can yell at to kick the football. But somebody was like, "Well, that's cool. Can you show me Swap Fire?" And I was like, "Well, I don't have the Wii." Yeah, I was like, "You know what? I can run it on my laptop, and I got a Wii remote." So when you got the Wii remote, you have two axes. You can look up and down. And then, of course, with the 1 and 2 buttons, you can turn left and right independent of each other. When you're using a dual analog stick, the two axes feed on each other, right? So, like, the further you push on the y-axis, the less on the x, and vice versa. So, technically, although it may be a pain in the you-know-what to get used to, I think there's a competitive advantage there. And if you think of the Onross cannon more like a sword rather than a gun, because a lot of people want to put the pointer on and then shoot, and it's like, no, fire and then just cut across somebody. You want to just slice across somebody. But you'd have to think about the way we'd sort of designed the game, or we'd have to have made that a better part of our narrative. I kept saying that, and I was like, we have to make that a part of our narrative so people, sort of understand that. But I don't think it became a real strong part of it. And so, most people just want to play it like they play Call of Duty, and that's fine. I think at this point, I like the dual analog controls probably better. Although I can pick it up and play it with either control scheme. And one of the things I might do, I haven't done this yet. I thought of the idea because I played Drop Zone against the computer, and I posted a screenshot on Miiverse, but I got like 2,200 points on Drop Zone, which is, I think that's like pretty insane. I haven't been able to match it since, but I was going to see if I could do better with the Wii Remote. That was with the Pro Controller. That was Gamepad. That was the Gamepad, not the Pro Controller. But I was going to see what I could do with the Wii Remote and sort of try to prove that it's actually the more dominant control, maybe more dominant. It's tough to say though. I think it's with the Wii Remote and the dual analogs, all the dual analog controllers, that I think they're all close enough though that it does maintain sort of a competitive parity, and that not one is really going to stick out beyond the others. So, but the Joy-Cons are definitely. I mean, you can map this to the Joy-Cons. So, well, see how it goes.
Well, we don't need to wait for you to put up a Kickstarter. We need to get the PSVG fan base to go. You can buy it online. Even if you don't have a Wii U, you can go to the Nintendo shop and go ahead and buy this game so Donnie can play it on a Switch. That's the only reason why everybody's going to buy one, is so me and my kids can play it on the Switch. Because you reached out to, I say me, I typically run our Twitter account most days. You actually reached out to us and were like, hey, have you ever heard about this game? And I was like, no, I've never heard of this game. I have no idea what this is. And you're like, would you like to review it? And I was like, we would love to review it. You're one of the first developers to reach out to us. We're constantly badgering everybody. Like, hey. So I gave it to Kevin, and I was like, you take a look at this game. It looks really neat. I love the mechanic. But I don't have a Wii U anymore. I would have streamed it. I'm just saying, Kevin.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have any fancy Elgatos. Sorry, I'm working on that.
But with this 30% off Valentine's Day sale, I'm going to buy a copy of the game, even though I'm not going to play it. We need to get it over to the Switch. Now that you have plans already announced to eventually bring it to the Switch, are you already starting to pre-plan extra modes or Switch specific content, or possibly?
Yeah, definitely it would be a sequel. The way that we look at the Wii U game is that it's designed from the ground up for that console. And so just like a port of regular Swap Fire to the Switch is not what we're going to do. It's going to be a full-blown sequel that's tuned to take advantage of that console's unique properties. It will have to be network multiplayer, because now we're not going to have we might be able to do like a 4-player mode, but it sort of seems like when you go to the Switch, you've got to do that. Our commentator mode wouldn't work anymore. We don't have that second screen that's not networked, and so we're gonna have to step up our game there. We'll have to at least have local wireless, and if you're gonna do local wireless multiplayer, it's networking. You might as well take the plunge and go have some online multiplayer as well. So I think it's going to have probably some of the same game modes, maybe the favorites from the first game, and then it's going to definitely have some new modes. So we've thought of a lot of things that we actually want to do. Some of the things that, just one of the random ideas that I keep thinking about, and it wasn't planned for the first game, so I almost threw it in at the last second, but it seems like it'd be really fun if you could swap places with your swap bombs. And so that's like one of the things that's on my mind. Like, what if you could toss a swap bomb, turn off the, and then swap with it? What would that do? And obviously it would probably completely break the mechanics of the first game. But if it's something that we think about as we're designing the second game, it might be a lot of fun. And I think there's a list of dozens of things that we either, for the most part with the first game, when we launched it, we felt like we were at 100%. And it was sort of one of those things where after we submitted to Nintendo and you get this cool off period where you have weeks before it comes out and you're just sitting there, and it sort of dawned on us later on. We put it away for a while and came back to it, and it was like, all right, it's probably not 100%. We felt like that's where we got to, but then you start analyzing it and looking at different things, and so we've got this checklist of things that maybe at the core that we want to tweak or improve a little bit, and then also just to extend the story and stuff like that. Kevin, did you find the secret in the single player?
Not that I know of.
No, okay. We put a poll on Twitter, and like 50% of people said that they had found it, and now I don't know if they're just lying.
Liars.
So.
I did more multiplayer though, to be honest. I didn't play too much of the single player.
Okay, yeah.
I kind of just jumped right in head first.
There's sort of some fun and some secrets. In the one video, the On the Links guys did. They do talk about the coconut. So there's, just to give you a clue, there is a coconut. And I'll give this one away. But if you fire a swap bomb into the at the very end when you open the last door, there's like a wormhole out in space. And so if you fire a swap bomb into the wormhole, a coconut will shoot back out at you, and so they talk about that on the video. It's pretty funny. That was something that went in like at the last second. Yeah, it was really got a kick out of that last one. But all of them were great. But we have a story that we're trying to tell also and expand upon, and it's not the single player in the first game. I think we sort of felt like we were fighting with one arm or maybe both arms tied behind our back, trying to pull off a narrative and stuff like that. Just because that stuff does require, some resources, but we put something together that's scalable, and we want to expand that, more in the second game, besides coming up with more gameplay modes and things like that. Obviously the multiplayer is just going to be expanded upon, and we're going to get into the networking, but then on the single player side, I think we want to tell more of the story and sort of the roots of this corporation. And, maybe it's not all hunky dory. You're going to find out, which we allude to that with some of the stuff. So the whole time I was making this and some of the things that I did were like, you can cut the cactuses and the water ripples, and, you can, if you find that coconut, you can cut the coconut open. And so you're sort of picking up on that anything with water content is affected by this thing, and it's actually a little dangerous, even though the whole time they're like, yeah, it's all completely safe and you're gonna be fine, you're a teenager and happy, it's all hunky dory. And a lot of that actually is so Vince White is the comic book artist that drew the comics and the characters and stuff, and he's really great with, you give him an idea, like, yeah, I want to do something like this. So I'd written the original like dialogue between the characters for the opening, and I was like, so this is going to lighten the mood from these spikes and this other stuff that I did. And then he came in and took a look at it, and he's like, yeah, that's cool for a front, but you got to have, we need more of a twist. And so then we had this conversation about how we're going to twist it a little bit, and it's still going to have this sort of shiny, nice veneer, but underneath it, there's going to be something else going on. And so we're really interested and I think excited to build that out a little bit more. And some of it is unveiled in the first game. The very beginnings of you realizing there's more going on is sort of unveiled. So
yeah, it's still cool. I mean, and keep in mind too, while Donnie is a trader and traded in his Wii U ahead of time prematurely, there's still going to be a whole other generation of gamers getting a Wii U for the first time. And I mean, we've done numerous, and we did a whole special on the amazing library that the Wii U actually has that tons and tons of people missed out on entirely. So I still think there's going to be a second market rolling in that'll pick it up down the line, buy it on the used market, and they'll still have that opportunity to play Swap Fire anyway. So
yeah, we're hoping for that. Trying to figure out how to reach sort of, because you're absolutely right. There's a niche within a niche of Nintendo, definitely. And you have that sort of the edge. There's people that are just like, dude, I've moved on. And we've messaged a lot of people and they're like, yeah, sorry, if you get it on the Switch, I'll buy it, but I'm done with the Wii U, and they've moved on. But like I have a friend, a lifelong friend who they just got a Wii U in their family, for Christmas. And he's like, yeah, really excited about it. It's like, okay, and it's, I think maybe will be a little harder to reach those people just because they're not the ones that are online or, whatever. So I think figuring out a way to reach the people that are sort of on the trailing end of the console cycle is probably going to be our challenge, sort of just from a business perspective. But I've said that because we read some numbers off of a Gama Sutra article a couple years ago and sort of came away with like, look, if we can make a quality Wii U game, we should be able to hit these numbers, which, by AAA standards are very low. But for an indie studio, it was like that would be enough to fund a set, to kickstart and like fund a series of games. And so we've got to figure out a way to sell that number of copies, or I guess the two strategies are it's either that finding those trailing edge people, or getting in good with the crowd that's really excited about the Switch. And for us right now, we're sort of weighing those two options. Like, how do we go forward and like keep making this game,
Yeah, for sure. It's a tough balance. So we'd like a couple more questions for you. We're going to kind of get away from Swap Fire directly, but it's still tied to it. So, in full disclosure for me, and I've talked about it on the show before jumping in to play some video games, I didn't really play many indie titles at all. I wasn't quite the bro gamers you described playing like only Call of Duty and Madden every year, but I did stick mainly to the mainstream releases. But then the opportunity through the site came through, and I've played a lot more indie games, and I find myself enjoying a lot of these, and even more so now than some of the bigger titles. So being an indie developer yourself, what would you say to somebody to get them to give the game a shot when they typically don't play something like this?
I think it's a really good question because, for even I remember growing up, and if a game didn't have straight 9s or 10s, it was like, okay, that game's just crap. Or maybe every now and again you'd play a game that got 8s or 7s or something like that, but it had to be something that you really loved. I think maybe the first game I bought and really loved that got terrible reviews was Race Driving on the Genesis. I don't know if you remember that game way back in the day, but I think it was the first game I bought, and it got like 4s or something like that. It was just horrible. They were like, this game sucks, don't get it, but I was like, I'm getting this game. So I love flat shaded polygon graphics, and I used to have dreams about this game. So I got it, I loved it, and I think that was an eye-opening experience for me because I was like, you don't just have to buy the games that get the best scores. And sometimes you can have the best time with something because it's different, not necessarily due to the magnitude of its execution, which the way that Swapfire has been received, I feel like we've seen, two sets of reviews. And the reviews have been a lot like yours, where the people are like, hey, this is fun and it's different. And they sort of measured it on the direction of its creativity, and all, and they also realized a lot, like you did, a lot of the sort of the throwbacks and the connections, but it's very much on the feeling, of the game, And then there's other people that sort of weighted on the magnitude of its execution, where they thought, okay, well, it's this FPS and it's going to have this feature, this feature, this feature, this feature in order to measure up to, FPS X, Y, or Z. And, clearly you can tell that was not our agenda at all. I think you probably dialed in on it better than anybody else. Like when we read your review, like, wow, this guy just like totally got our intentions. and we had great intentions for people. We want people to just have fun, but we knew what we were making, and we knew what we weren't making, and our goal was never to try to compete with other things. We weren't going to compete with their online. We weren't going to compete with all the options and all that stuff. We were going to create a new direction, and I think we created a cool, non-violent first-person shooter, which I think is really hard to pull off. And that was like one of the things. I think that's been a goal of mine, because I'd made a couple of games in my past where it did violent stuff or whatever, and it just really doesn't feel good. I remember growing up and playing Mortal Kombat, and there was this sort of rebellious feeling like, hey, I'm playing this game where I'm ripping this dude's spine out, and it was fun, for a while. But as you grow up, you're like, that was cool, because at that age it seemed appropriate and stuff like that, and we were sort of seeking the free expression of art, our medium of choice for artistic expression. But once you got past that, it was like, all right, well, what are you doing for the world? A little bit. And some people, I do a lot of like startup stuff, and with video games, sometimes people sort of look at it like, well, what are you doing? Spending your time doing that. Like, why aren't you curing cancer? I feel like a lot of people just look at you like they're like, you can write code and you can do all this. Why don't you do something more with? And at Midnight Status, we do. And in the area that we live in here in Norfolk, Virginia, it's a very utilitarian area, and they want problems solved, not necessarily like make something for fun. But
right.
Personally, I think maybe there's not a higher calling than being really just honest and being like, hey, I want other people to have a good time, be with their friends, be able to, and maybe able to share with this with their kids if they, as long, I think we rated the game E10.
Yeah.
And the only reason we did that was because there are guns in it. And I talked with my wife and was like, how do we feel about our kids seeing guns? It's funny. I talked to a fellow at MagFest. I think it was from Ohio. And he's like, oh, it's just because you live in the city. You feel like you can't show kids guns in Ohio. And so I was like, well, that's probably fair enough. I guess maybe we could have just rated it E, because really nobody gets hurt in this game.
No.
And, everybody's just swapping locations. And so, I think that was a challenge. And I think we succeeded at making something where it's pretty cool, and it's still nonviolent, and it is something that everybody can sit down and play and have fun. And depending on how you feel about a gun being on screen, and the idea of targeting somebody and shooting them, even if nothing bad is happening to them, that's why we rated it E10. But other than that, we sort of accomplished that goal, and I think I'm proud of that. And even if it's, and I would even go as far to say that there's a utilitarian need for that. You need that sense of community. People want to get together and play games. I think Stan Lee has some really great quotes about that type of stuff. He's commented on a lot about how he felt when he was growing up, and a lot of his friends were doing this, that, or the other thing, and being doctors and lawyers, and he's making comic books, and then he realizes, well, wait a minute, people will go nuts if they can't get like an outlet and use their imaginations and stuff like that. So then at a certain point he realized he was doing great service to people. I think where we are in our community, we're trying to point that out more and more to people. That this is a noble. I think it's a very noble pursuit. I think it's honest. It's a really honest pursuit, because you make the best thing you can. You work your tail off for it, and you have to go through the daggers of people being like, you made crap, and they call it like they see it, and you did your best, but you just you can't make every shot, I guess, or you can't be perfect, and so that's just part of the job. But definitely an honest pursuit, and definitely one where you're really just trying to make people have fun. You're like, hey, here's this thing, laugh a little bit. So,
I gotta say, for not seeing what our questions are, your ability to segue from question to question is pretty amazing, actually. Because I was going to bring up, and you had talked about it a little bit before, is that in addition to developing games, you founded Pixel Fest, and you also work with high school students as far as discussing game and app development. So can you just talk to us and tell us a little bit about some of those other things that you're doing, those other projects you're working on?
Yeah, love to. So I was an indie game developer, and I picked that pretty early on as my path. I went to school for a little while for computer science. After that Dave Jaffe diss that I told you, I mailed a letter to Sony. It was like, how do I become, a game designer, developer? I want to work with Dave Jaffe. Still haven't met him or anything, but they wrote back and they're like, hey, go get an engineering degree or a computer science degree. And I was like, damn, man, I am so bad at math. I'm so bad at science. I like, this is not like, how am I going to do this? So I had a TI-85 calculator, which I had already been making games on, and I just really went hardcore into that. Did this whole path of making games, Garage Games published Aerial Antics, and that was cool. Did a lot of just crazy indie experiments, and then got into the mobile market, had some success with mobile. Airspin was like a #1 ranked iOS game in certain categories for a while, and in the US, I think it would hit like number 43 of all apps on the store. So that was a pretty good success, and it came after, I sort of fast forwarded past my serious games experience, but I was making mobile games, and I wrote iPhone 3D game programming all in one. And somewhere around that time, I had met some people that needed a game developer to make some like mod sim and serious game software. And I had read about that stuff in Wired, like 10 years prior, and I was like, that sounds like a cool industry too, and it's this industry where you're actually, affecting the real world with your game. So, let me at least try that. I got this offer to get into it. So I worked at L3 Communications for 2 years, sort of a break from being an indie game developer. And I made software for the Marine Corps and the Department of Transportation, and several. We did like a lot of other prototypes for people, but those are the two like big projects that we shipped. And it was really eye-opening, rewarding experience. Some of the best times of my life making those games, and sort of having a real-world impact. But when I got out, really what happened was those projects sort of cleared up, and there wasn't really any more work, and I got laid off. Which was I got laid off like at Christmas. I knew I was going to get laid off. I had my job for a little while longer, but that was a tough time period. And when it happened, I, trying to figure out what to do. I remember looking at like, okay, I'm going to get unemployment and maybe find another job. Like, what am I going to do? And I just decided to go back to my indie roots and just make another indie game. So that's when I made Airspin. And so Airspin took off. And, literally did well for us and sort of saved our family. And then I guess I found out about there's some brewing startup stuff in our neighborhood. I think in 2011 people started to get excited about mobile development and the types of businesses that were coming out of Silicon Valley. So people wanted to do it in this area as well. And so there was an Ignite event, which is where you have to do a talk, and you have 15 seconds per slide, I think, and there's like 20 slides in 5 minutes or something like that. You don't have long; it was just 30 seconds per slide, something like that. So, and I'm pestering this guy to let me talk about Airspin. I want to do it. I want to do this, this chat. I've had this success, and I feel good about it. And so he's like, no, listen, I've been planning this for like 6 months, and I have my speakers. You're not speaking, just. So I was like, all right, fine. I'll and we also had a maker fair, and so I was going to go to this maker fair the next day, and they were sort of being, marketed together, but they were separate events. But like 4 hours later, or 4 hours, prior to the event, the guy calls me back. He's like, hey, one of our speakers got sick, so can you come and just like fill in? And I was like, it's like 4 hours. And at this point, I hadn't done a lot of speaking engagements yet. I had done one about our Department of Transportation project at Unite, and that might have been like the first talk where I was on a stage talking to people about something I made. And so this was maybe like the second one that I had done. But I was like, all right, whatever. And I sort of put something together and winged it a little bit, but the talk was how to top the App Store for $1,000, and talked about Airspin. And through that talk, that's where I met a lot of other people in my neighborhood or in my community that were looking to improve the area and do things. So I met a guy, Tom Flake, who I just had lunch with today, who's been a great mentor to me. And he was at the time the head of an incubator, the Peninsula Technology Incubator. And I met another guy, Zach Miller, who runs a thing called Hatch in downtown Norfolk. And I basically got caught up in this entrepreneurial ecosystem in our area at that time period. So it was 2012. And I spent a lot of time in these incubators and these accelerators and things. And, I always read about Silicon Valley and, always admired what they do there. So I think through observation at the incubators and accelerators, I realized that there was like a gap in what people were trying to do between their technical capabilities and then like their ability to make it simple and marketable and stuff like that. And then I also realized that a lot of the folks, I guess a lot of the folks are older You know, I mean, at this point, I'm getting older. I'm 38. So this is, you know, 5 years ago. So I was in my young 30s at the time, sort of finding this stuff. And so the school program is very much, well, first of all, it was a serendipitous thing. I was teaching a summer camp in 2012 where I showed off SwapFire, and the kids loved it. So that was actually probably the first motivation that I had to make this game. Is the kids were like, "Hey," every day they wanted to play it, and it was like, "Really, you guys want to play this? Like, this one level," and they just, you know. Anyway, I was doing that, and one of the ladies in the school, who was like the director of technology, I went looking for the IT guy because the kid was having trouble, and she came in and saw what all these kids were making. So I directed this camp and had the kids all using Unity, and they were just putting together all these crazy demos and stuff. And so she was like, "They made all that?" You know, just blown away. And so she was like, can you consult and like come in and help us to build a program like this? And I was like, yeah, sure. It took us a while. I think it took us over a year, like a year and a half from that point to actually get something going. But we kept meeting and kept talking about what the possibilities were and stuff. And at that same time, I was getting caught up in this incubator accelerator stuff and realized that, you know, there was a lot of older people that were involved in this that wanted our community to get going. But if you look at Silicon Valley, or if you look at, you know, even probably New York, but just looking at Silicon Valley or like Y Combinator, that type of stuff that they do there, they're always focused on young people and getting the people to be as young and technical as possible, as early as possible, so that in that time period in your life when you don't have any responsibility, you know, you can do something amazing with that. And so I sort of pieced these two things together and said, all right, I'm going to take these kids, I'm going to find some kids at this school, and I'm going to make them as dangerous as I am. But instead of them being in their 30s by the time they're this good, they'll be 20, you know. And we've got two kids that are they're amazing. They come hang out with us a lot, and I'm trying to show them everything I know so they can just be, you know, just ace, you know, developers when they're super young. Try to answer all their questions and stuff. You know, we've had a lot of kids that have come through. We have two right now that are super dedicated that I think are going to really do some amazing things. You know, and then Pixel Fest is, we created it really just to show off SwapFire. It was very much a right time, right place type of thing. We thought maybe we could get like 100 people in a room and do like a game jam, but also say, hey, and we made this game, you know, maybe tell your friends about it, and some good things would come from that. And it more or less, we looked at the con landscape and we're like, all right, we're gonna have to go to this con and this con and this con and this con to show off SwapFire so people can play it in person because it's a local multiplayer and all this stuff. And you know, there's nothing in Hampton Roads or in Norfolk for us to show this off, so let's make our own event. And yeah, it's going to be small, nobody's going to show up, but for somehow like almost 5,000 people showed up to this event.
Wow.
And so we created something else that sort of really, I gave a talk on it last night at Hatch, and it was just like, man, it's right time, right place, and there's just no accounting for timing. You know, we went to the library, told them what a game jam was, and they were like, hey, this sounds educational. You know, and more or less the conversation, I think it wasn't this direct, but it really turned into what could you do with the whole library. And so we were like, all right, yeah, we'll just, you know, plan an event. And it's this great 7-story library, so there's different things on every floor. The 5th floor last year was really amazing. We had a Smash Brothers tournament, Minecraft EDU, an indie showcase, and SwapFire for all. There's a lot of density on that floor, but you know, all the floors had really cool things. We had Dave Hernley does this Starship Simulator. He brings it to MagFest and a lot of different festivals. I don't know if you've seen it. Starship Horizons. I've known him for a long time because had a project before SwapFire called Hail, which was very much in that genre, and so he and I had a lot of conversations. But you know, so a lot of people basically showed up to show off games, and a lot of fans came to play games. But our secret is that when you're there, we're actually trying to guide you up to the 6th floor to join a game jam and learn how to make them. And so we've got all these. We've got like Scratch programming classes and Unity boot camps and art boot camps and all this stuff. And so it's sort of my answer to the entrepreneurial ecosystems. And I should say that's my unique perspective, because now there's so many people involved with Pixel Fest. You know, Henry, who works with me, has a lot of, you know, he just likes the idea of building community, and we do these monthly meetups with people and stuff. You know, the library staff just kicks in huge, and obviously their mission is to educate the whole town, which is, you know, part of what's put this together. But for me, having spent time in these incubators and accelerators and realizing there's just this gap, you know, I either had conversations with hardcore engineers that would come to me and say, Jeremy, how do I make people understand this deep thing that I've done? And me as a game developer, I build these complex things on the back end that you have to understand in 3 seconds. Like if I put it in front of you and you can't play it, what good is it? So it doesn't matter that I spent years, engineering something if you can't use it. And I think maybe game developers understand that better than anybody else. So I had those conversations with these engineers, and I could talk to them. I'm an engineer, but then I would also have conversations with people that were like, "Man, I got this new app idea, but like no way to execute it, just no clue how they would make that work." And so it's like there's people here, and there's people here, and there's nobody right in the middle.
Yeah.
So I think that game developers are really good at that. If you look at a lot of the entrepreneurs that we look up to, like the Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, those guys made video games when they were young, and then at some point they made something. We did a talk at Pixel Fest last year, and it was showing the guys who are successful in games, Shigeru Miyamoto and Notch, and I think we used Will Wright, and then it showed these 3 guys that were not successful in games, and it's like, well, they sort of graduated upward, they sort of failed upwards, I guess is the way that I put it, because they went on from not, they couldn't make a successful video game, but they made a successful space company and, the iPhone and all this stuff. So I don't know. I think that learning to make games, you have to do that. You have to be able to engineer something complicated, and you have to make it simple on the front end and engaging. And, if you have that skill set, I think you can do any business or product or project. And so Pixel Fest, for me, is a way to try to help the people in, really anywhere. We're trying to obviously bring people from all over. We're targeting the East Coast right now, and there's just the other cities that are close to us, like Raleigh and DC and Richmond. But, maybe we'll reach, each year we'll reach a little bit further, and people like this idea of coming and playing games, because we all still like to play them. But then they'll also learn how to make something, whether it be a game or a business plan or art, video, any of those things. We can sort of hook that to the entrepreneurial ecosystem as well. And so, Pixel Fest is a little bit fun and a little bit about learning. So it was definitely a really rewarding experience last year. And we're planning the 2017. We call it the 2.017 event. A little bit of programming, like software development joke, but we'll see how it goes this year. See if it grows. Or being a sophomore event, I'm a little worried. Myself, just obviously we're gonna do our best to make it successful, but you just don't know. The first year was a success, and who knows what this year will be. So over and over and over again, because it's cool. We're lucky. In Norfolk 20 years ago was horrible. We have this conversation over and over and over again, because the leadership that's been here has been in, we had a mayor, he just retired, but he was up there for a long time, with those city council members for a long time. And honestly, I don't even know that much about it. All I know is that the city has just had this dramatic shift over 20 years. And it's a very cool place to be right now. I feel very lucky to be in this particular city, because we're catching it at this sort of inflection point where a lot of creativity and entrepreneurship and just cool restaurants are popping up and stuff, where 20 years ago you couldn't walk around downtown without maybe getting shot. So it's
dummies books,
yeah.
Things like that. So I can absolutely relate. I mean, it sounds, what you're doing is fantastic. I can, as someone that can speak firsthand, it'd be nice if more people had access to things like that. But when you're not running Pixel Fest and building video games and running your software design company, we have to ask, as we kind of get close to the close here, what is it you like to play? And do you even still play games?
I am such a retro gamer now, so I think maybe...
Oh, no, you just make...
I think maybe up till I was 35, I still played a lot of the newer stuff. But for some reason, once I was like 35, 36 is where... 36, I went on eBay and... I am such a retro gamer now, so... I bought it in the box again, and I think maybe up till I was 35, I still played a lot of the newer stuff. But for some reason, once I was like 35, 36 is where it really came. Like 36, I went on eBay and bought every game console that either got thrown away or like I thought I didn't take good enough care of, and bought it in the box again. And And I carry the 3DS around, and it is just like the goblet. I mean, it's the holy grail because it has all the it just has all these retro games. So usually you'll find me playing either an SNES game on the 3DS, maybe an NES game. The ones that I really like, actually, and I wish they would have done this for the NES games, are the Sega 3D remakes. So you'll find me definitely playing like Streets of Rage 2 in 3D. I think those things are awesome. I can't believe they don't get more hype. It's a niche within a niche, I guess. But I requested. I found that the developer that made those games, I definitely requested the Power Drift. And I know they put it in with that bundle, but I totally bought that bundle just for Power Drift. Because I was blown away by Power Drift in the arcades growing up. And I was like, dude, they've got to do Power Drift because that was the most amazing. It was so colorful and so fast. And I remember it had these 3D, they did the 3D flyover of the track, and it was just mind blowing growing up seeing that. And the 3D version did not disappoint me. And it's literally got that Power Drift where you're sliding around the turns, and man, that thing is beautiful. For some reason that's sort of that's my happy place. I just like the old games now, and the more pixels the better. And I played this year. What did I get that was new? I got No Man's Sky on PS4, not a Nintendo game, but just as a developer, I really appreciate what they did. I know there was a lot of hate because they hyped it up, and obviously there was a lot of features there. And one of the things I like to say is, as a developer, you always see your game for like what it could be, not for what it is.
Sure.
And you're really not capable of seeing it for what it is because you see you see it for what it can be. So I feel Murray. What's his first name?
Sean
Murray. Yeah, I feel a little bad for him. I know people hate him because I know he got rich and everything like that too. So I guess there's some hate because maybe he got some cash for some value that wasn't there, and maybe that's deserved to a degree. But at the same time, I could understand how there'll be a tough position to be in. People are really hyped about your game, and you want to make sure they're going to buy it and all this stuff. So I guess he just went on this long litany of things that he saw in his head that it could be, and he should have been more objective, or maybe they should have had a PR person. But after I read all the hate, because I didn't really know much about it, I wasn't paying that much attention to it until the hate started coming in, and I was like, this actually sounds like something I would like because it's so niche. So I went and bought it, and I was blown away by it. And I think the reason I like that game is because it doesn't have any of these objective things that we look for in other games. What it does have is a canvas for me to put my imagination on. And
Sure.
So when I'm flying with other ships, I don't really care that the game isn't telling me what those ships are doing there, because I can make up my own story in my head as to why I'm flying with those ships or whatever. And so, I appreciated it. I had this moment in the game where I had killed an animal. It was the first animal that I had killed. And, it was like a T-Rex looking thing, and it's attacking me, beating me up. And I guess I didn't have to kill it, but I sort of shot it, and, it ran away for a second. I was like, well, this thing could kill me. I have like no health left, and it was getting cold and everything. And, he starts coming back towards me, and I shoot him. And I had this real like moral, ethical dilemma where I was like, should I have killed that thing or should I not? Because he like screamed and it falls over and just it was I felt bad, and then all of a sudden like a storm came in right after I killed him, and I had to run back to my ship. So I run back to my ship, I get in, and I have this on video. I showed it to Henry. It's hilarious. I get back in my ship, and I'm out of fuel, like the jumper fuel to get you off the planet. So I just, so like the cabin closes, and I sit in the ship, and like sad music comes on because the storm comes in, and I just have to wallow in the fact that I killed this animal. And like, so I'm writing my own story here, and I know as I'm having that experience that I know the game has some parameters and some things to sort of maybe help cultivate these experiences, but at the same time, like nobody's going to have that experience. Probably nobody's ever going to visit that planet and see that animal and have that experience in the game. And so the experience is very close to being a unique experience like you would have in real life. Your experience is your own. Nobody's ever going to have them other than you. you can share them with other people, but they can't live them. And they created something very powerful, and the fact that they made a universe, I think is just philosophically, I'm in awe of it. As a developer, I actually wanted to do a procedural jam for Pixel Fest just to make people make that, and all my developer buddies told me it was too high level and we're not going to do it. They're like, no, you got to start, simple. So maybe in a few years we'll do a procedural jam and have people make their own universes. I think it's cool. I can understand, from a gamer that wants to have more of like an Uncharted experience. I think I actually played this in Uncharted in the same week. I didn't buy Uncharted, I just rented it. And I had a real appreciation for the way Uncharted was laid out and the polish, and it's like a movie, and it's, and it entertains you, and it looks beautiful and all this. But I found that maybe as I get older, that sort of on rails experience, while it's entertaining, was not quite as rewarding to me. And so, as much hate as No Man's Sky got, I think I really appreciated that, as a game. This year there was a new game. Other than that, over the past few years, besides the retro games, I've just played the Nintendo, the Mario Kart and Splatoon, and anything that I can get on my Wii U, I picked up, especially if it was multiplayer. So I definitely played all of those games as well.
Cool. All right, so we're about to the end. So I have one last question for you, though, before we leave. So one of the earlier reviews that we did for Play Some Video Games was a game called Poncho. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or not, but Delve Interactive made it. It was a title that I really liked as well. Very retro feel to it. Like you said, the more pixels, the better. So it's very much in that vein. But they never got the commercial success that they were expecting out of it. And they've been very vocal about that. They did a super lengthy blog post about the whole thing and basically just said, it was released cross-platform. It's been a year out. We haven't made a single penny on this whole deal. Wow. Now, you've been very forthright about the cost and the toll, both financially and emotionally, on you being a self-funded title and you having that pressure on yourself to perform and get this game out here. We know it's still a little early on. SwapFire has only been out for a few months so far. But has it done what you had expected? And has that post-release, sigh of relief hit you yet now that it's out there and people are starting to enjoy it and can find it and have fun with it?
No, in terms of financial success, or like from a business perspective, it has not hit anywhere near, what we would expect. We invested a year and a half of basically full-time game, development into this game. This is something that cost us, in excess of $200,000 to develop, in terms of resources. So we are, desperately trying to find a footing or, a finger hold to grab onto, because, to date, just to be completely honest, the game has shipped sold less than 200 copies of the game, and so we're talking like thousands of dollars. Not even thousands, not even $2,000 back in revenue yet. So it's a really, it's a real gut punch, I guess, to work that long and that hard on something. At the end of development, I'm putting in like 130-hour work weeks to ship the game, and we haven't found that place, that certain nerve. Like, what nerve do we pinch to get people to realize that, hey, this is a fun game. And it's different. Nobody's going to have played anything else really like it, and we try to channel these emotions and these feelings through it that maybe you had with other games, but it's at the same time you're going to be thinking about this. You're going to think about games in a new way when you play it, and so I think maybe that's one big value proposition with games. As a developer, of course, you work that hard to develop the game and to get it out there. You'll never work harder. It's basically sleepless nights, especially at the end. But the thing that I think I realize is that once you have the game out there, you have to work as hard as a marketer as you did as a developer. And I don't think a lot of developers do that. So I've even been thinking, every day I'm trying to come up with a new strategy. Like, what am I going to do? The other day, we did like a social media post, and it was like, hey, share this post and we'll give you a free copy of the game, and like nobody's sharing it. So I could just give up at that point, but then I was like, let me try something different. So I said, let me try to just say, hey, like tag somebody you love for this Valentine's special, and then we'll give you a free copy of the game. And all of a sudden, people just started posting, and so it's not. I don't feel that it's impossible to find that, but I think I have to work as hard as a marketer as I did as a developer to get the game out there. And a lot of developers, I think, sort of, you sort of stop at that point, and it might be impossible. I mean, when the iPhone came around, a lot of developers had a lot of success because Apple had created this new marketplace, and it was just this total rising tide. And if you were a boat in that tide, you got lifted up with it. People made the crappiest things, and they were huge successes, right? With this game, the way that I also look at it is, if for some reason we're not able to hit our sales target, we're not able to pinch the right nerve or whatever, and we're going to pinch every nerve we can. I mean, we're not going to stop. But say for some reason we can't do it, and the Switch takes over, and we obviously plan to go to Switch. I'm going to look at it as, well, we made SwapFire, and it was in obviously a tide that was, ebbing out to sea because it's the Wii U. When I became a Wii U developer and I got in and got the dev kit and everything, I mean, that was 3 years ago. Now, that was pretty early in the console's life cycle, but when you consider the fact that when you get there and, you think, I've always wanted to make a Nintendo game, I want to make something I'm really proud of. I spent over a year just messing with it, trying to figure out what it was going to make as an indie. These are the things you think about. And then once you decide what to make, then it was a year and a half basically to make that thing. And so 2.5 years to make and, to decide and then make and then to ship something. So yeah, it's a big investment, but, in our models and stuff, and I, from being in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, I don't look at it as a one game type of deal. If this one game is not successful, really what we then have to do is get as many people to learn about it as possible so that maybe we can have a financial success with the second game. And, when you're doing your business modeling, you look at the lifetime value of a customer. You don't just look at, how many copies of this one game do I sell? And, hopefully if we can just get SwapFire into people's hands, or, somebody like yourself can review it and recommend it to other people. And little by little, hopefully this creates a tipping point. And whatever people we reach with the first game, hopefully a good percentage of them at least will be interested in the second game.
Totally.
And if we can do that, then, and say we plan for 3 games, a typical trilogy, then we can put a lifetime value on a customer that way, and we can have that financial discussion, do that financial modeling, create the spreadsheets that say, we actually can make this profitable, even if this first game looks like a failure, and I think there's a lot of creative ways to do that. I'm hoping that I don't have to do that, though. I'd really prefer to figure out a way to, just have the honest transaction with the first game where we hit our sales target or close to it. And, we weren't looking to sell millions of games. We were looking to sell thousands. We were looking to sell tens of thousands of copies. If we sell tens of thousands of copies, I'll hit the expectation that we had, if we can find a way to pinch that nerve. I think it is tough. SwapFire is, I think one of the things we didn't think about initially, and we obviously thought about marketing, and we created like the Mario Made site, and that was one of the marketing tools that we created early on, because I played Mario Maker and I realized, well, you can't really search and like categorize these levels. Yeah. And then I can't take the time to create something unless, maybe it hooks into something, but it was like, what? Let's make this website, and it'll give us a community that we can talk to about SwapFire. So, we did some marketing. Maybe it wasn't enough early on, and I think it is very challenging to sort of like reach people's hearts and their minds. And with games, like I said, it's a very honest thing. You sort of have to make people fall in love with the game, and I think that's something that just takes time. It's something that you can do, though, if people know that you're really committed to it and know that you're going to do the right things and take the right steps and treat them honestly. Eventually, I think you build up that trust, and financial success will come at some point, as long as you're completely committed to it. You got a body and a mind in order to carry out your dreams, and so you put those through whatever you have to in order to sort of get there. That's kind of the way that I look at it anyway. And there's a way there. We'll have to figure out what it is. As tough as the market is right now, and as much as the Wii U is an ebbing tide, there's some way to find success inside of that.
Absolutely. I mean, even if you don't find the quote unquote financial success with this title, like you mentioned, the building the customer base down the line with sequels and other things you do is definitely worth it. And I think regardless, you have something you should be extremely proud of. The innovativeness of this game, like I said, for me being the quote unquote the old man of the team here and being the retro guy, I caught all the references, like you said, and you brought that up too. And I didn't know about this. We hadn't really talked about it prior to this interview, that all the things that I got from it, but you brought them up yourself, the American Gladiators, the Golden Eyes, stuff like that. It's something any gamer should be able to appreciate. If they're over the age of like 15, they have to be able to see like, oh, I get where this is coming from and I get where he's going with this. So It's definitely something to be proud of. And like you said, it's not an expensive title to get. So anybody has their Wii U, I encourage you to go out and buy it. Buy it now, especially it's on the promo. Save a little bit of money even there. Donnie made a purchase, so there you go.
Yes. 201.
The biggest thing is you get a couple buddies, you sit on the couch, you play the game. It's worth it right there. It's not an expensive title. It's cheaper than going out to the movies at this point. So getting a movie ticket and you get a lot more replay value. Yeah, you can get way more replay value out of this than going to see a movie in a theater right now, and it's totally worth it. So I encourage you all to go out there, check it out, Swapfire once again. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time. You've been more than generous spending this much time with us and being very honest with your answers there. We didn't pre-screen the questions, guys, so he answered everything we threw at him. But before we let you go, and before we close it up, where can our listeners find you and more information about Swapfire and Midnight Status?
So you can find Midnight Status on Twitter or on Facebook at Midnight Status or facebook.com/Midnight Status. You can go to midnightstatus.com. Probably the best place for all the things we do is midnightstatus.com. You'll see sort of the four prongs of the company: Swapfire and PixelFest, Tunnel Traffic, and our video chat tool. I'm on Twitter at Jeremy Alessi, and Facebook. You can find me on Facebook, Jeremy.f.Alessi. I had Jeremy Alessi, and somebody came in there when they introduced their little tool and took my name. I'm so upset about that. Yeah.
Yep.
Bummer, man. Yeah, I had to fight for the Midnight Status name on there too. But and you can find Swapfire on Twitter at SwapfireGame or Facebook.com/SwapfireGame or swapfire.net on the